Well, you see, you've hit on a sensitive point here because the thing is, if you give a president absolute immunity, he can do what he likes in office. He can kill his rivals. He
Yeah.
can do anything. I mean, as a matter of fact, his own lawyer suggested that that might be permissible because, it would be up to Congress, for example, to impeach and convict him, not up to a court.
It's 6 minutes past 6. Now, Donald Trump's hush money trial rumbles on in New York, and we'll come to that in a moment. But he has won a partial victory in one of the other legal cases that he's fighting. Supreme Court justices have delayed a potential decision after some of them seem to accept he may have some level of immunity over the 2020 riots. Sarah Baxter is director of the Mary Colvin Centre for International Reporting in New York.
They're examining whether Donald Trump can have absolute immunity from prosecution as President of the United States, i.e., for anything he did while he was in office. Now, that would seriously impact the case that's being brought against him by special counsel Jack Smith concerning the events of January the 6th at the Capitol, the riot or insurrection, as plenty call it, and the scheme to install fake electors to stop certifying Joe Biden's election victory in Congress. So basically, it would mean that he could mount a coup against the elected government of the United States and be declared immune because he was president.
Gosh, so I mean, it begs the question. I mean, other countries must have thought about this. There must be protections in place currently to stop, for example, a president coming to the end of the term in office and then being accused of a war crime for going to war to protect the United States, for example. There must be some protection in place for this already.
Well, you see, you've hit on a sensitive point here because the thing is, if you give a president absolute immunity, he can do what he likes in office. He can kill his rivals. He
Yeah.
can do anything. I mean, as a matter of fact, his own lawyer suggested that that might be permissible because, it would be up to Congress, for example, to impeach and convict him, not up to a court. You'd have this absolute immunity. But what if, say, he did order the assassination of a hostile foreign leader? You're not supposed to do that, of course, but say there was an imminent threat to the US and he took an executive decision that could come back to haunt him legally, even though he was doing it as president to safeguard the interests of the American people. Now, that's where you get into a sort of grey area that conservative judges are seizing on. We don't know yet what their verdict will be. In fact, we might not know for a while yet. But from the tenor of the questionings, it seems very likely now that they're making a distinction between things that a president might do as a personal act, for example, try and kill off a rival, and things that a president might do as a presidential act. So the big takeaway today is that chances of Donald Trump being tried for what happened on January 6th, never that bright, before the next election, are now almost entirely sunk. And that's why it's a very good day for Donald Trump. His people are acting as if they should be celebrating already because they don't think that this case is going to come to court before the next election.
Gosh, so huge implications. I'm just reading here some incredible questions from some of the justices. Justice Jackson, who's a Liberal justice, saying, I'm trying to understand what the disincentive is from turning the Oval Office into a seat of criminality. I mean, you can see the kind of the arguments that are being played out. And this, obviously, as you say, is beneficial to Donald Trump, but this has huge implications for future presidents of the United States as well.
Yes, well, one of the things about the founding fathers is they never really expected the president of the United States to be engaged in criminal behavior. So they didn't actually rule on this. So if the Supreme Court comes to a ruling about a distinction between presidential immunity and political immunity, that is, as one of the justices said, a decision for the ages. They are making history, and therefore they're going to take their time deliberating about this because it has to stand the test of time. Donald Trump's made it pretty clear that if he does get elected president, he wants to do to Joe Biden what he feels Joe Biden has done to him. and start launching prosecutions. You know, we know that he chanted before, lock her up, with regard to Hillary Clinton. And it now looks like there's genuine concern that more or less anybody who enters high office as a president is going to be subject to persecution and political prosecution by their enemies or rivals. And that's why the Supreme Court is now trying to walk on eggshells about this. I mean, it would be far simpler, of course, if they just said, oh, of course, a president is not immune for criminal acts. But now they're worried about what defines criminality. And as I say, it comes back to this question of, did a president undertake something in America's interests acting as a president? Or did he undertake something in his personal interest acting as just an ordinary person with extreme powers? So this is I don't know. I think it's going to be tremendously difficult. I mean, I almost feel like they could end up dancing on the head of a pin.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating stuff. We mustn't forget, of course, that Donald Trump is also facing another criminal trial at the moment, the hush money trial. Just bring us up to date with the latest in that.
Yes, well, this didn't go quite so well for Donald Trump today. This is the case brought against him by Alvin Bragg in New York regarding hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. There's no question that she received payments, but the question is, was it a criminal enterprise? And involving Donald Trump. Now, some of the evidence given in court today was from David Pecker, who was the owner of the National Enquirer, who basically promised to have Trump's back in the run-up to the 2016 election, and was promised to be his eyes and ears and to quote unquote catch and kill any negative stories about Donald Trump. Now, one of the negative stories that he paid for was this allegation by a Playboy model called Karen McDougal that that she'd had a 10-month affair, allegedly, with Donald Trump. Now, the National Enquirer paid her $150,000 effectively to silence her, i.e. they owned her story and they didn't publish it. Now, the interesting thing is that only days before Trump was due to take office as president, that is after he had won the 2016 election and various alleged facts like Karen McDougal's story had not come out, Donald Trump had a meeting with David Pecker. Actually, was sort of thanking him. He said he literally, according to Pecker, said, "I want to thank you for handling the McDougal situation," which draws a direct level of responsibility between the National Enquirer and Donald Trump, as opposed to middlemen that he could say that he knew nothing about. So. And apparently, Donald Trump also asked after Karen McDougal, "How's our girl?" And David Pecker replied, "She's cool. She's very quiet. No issues." So that's pretty revealing testimony, I think, from the former National Enquirer owner.
Sarah Baxter there, who's director of the Mary Colvin Centre for International Reporting in New York. Just on talking about just two of the trials which Donald Trump is facing.
Yeah, there's plenty more to come. And of course, that's all in the build-up to the US presidential election. This is the election station. And so that important context on Donald Trump and all that happens over the next few months up until that presidential election in November, we will bring to you on Times Radio.